Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Balancing It All podcast. I am Dr. Sheppard. Today, we are going to get a bit of an anatomy lesson. So, if you don't want to learn about how your body burns fat, burns carbs, and stores fat, then this is not the episode for you. So, we're going to go through a lot of science. I think it's super, super important, especially if you are working with me in one of my 6 week challenges, to kind of understand this. Because it's just really important to know what happens in our body when we eat things. We're going to focus on carbs today because this is the one that makes most sense to people, and that they kind of understand and they need to understand because carbs is one of the biggest macronutrients that people over tend to overdo. And so we need to understand what happens in our body when we overeat carbs. So there's two types of metabolism that we have. We've got basically glucose metabolism, where we're burning carbs on one end, and then we have ketogenic metabolism, which is burning fat on one end. So if you can envision those, and like a line in between. And we kind of want to be right in the middle. So we want to be burning about, be burning some body fat between meals, but we don't want to have to live a ketogenic lifestyle. And so we want to have some carbohydrates. So, what is the balance and how do we do this? So, basically, our primary source of energy in our body is carbohydrates. It's readily available, it's super easy to use. And so there's four ways that we can get energy from our body. So especially carbohydrate energy. Number one is blood sugar. It's basically what you've eaten, what carbs you've eaten, what's kind of in your blood right now. The second one is stored. There's two ways we store. We store carbs in our liver as a form of glycogen. We also can store carbs in our muscles, and that is also stored as glycogen. We also can store carbs as body fat. Everybody knows that. So, what we want to be able to do is have enough carbohydrates in our diet where we're not storing fat, but we're utilizing stored carbohydrates from our liver and from our muscle to then fuel our body. So, what happens when we're, on a caloric deficit? Our metabolic rate will decrease over 50% in 12 weeks. So, we don't want to be on long, extended caloric deficits. We want to be eating meals throughout the day so that our blood sugar is stable. So this is, all about blood sugar stabilization or, insulin resistance, if you want to talk about that. What we need to do to keep our insulin balanced is to eat protein, carbs, and fat at every meal. We always say don't eat naked carbs. So carbs by themselves are going to, and I'll kind of talk you through that, put you on an insulin roller coaster. So we want to, put some clothing on our carbs, not eat naked carbs. And we want to space our meals ideally 3 to 5 hours apart so we can burn some fat in between. If we're constantly grazing all day, we don't really give our body time to tap into that body fat because we're constantly eating and we're also spiking insulin. And so we want to move from carb saturation in our diet to a little bit of carb depletion. So, if you've ever been on a low carb diet, you'll notice once you kind of carb deplete, you'll get a little bit of a headache, you'll feel a little dizzy, you may be a little grouchy because those carbs are being depleted from your system. So we want to eat anywhere between 15 to 30 grams of carbs at a time, depending on how many meals you're having a day. If you're eating, 3 meals and 2 snacks, you're going to be higher up into the 30 grams of carbs. But we want lower glycemic carbs because those slow our insulin response. So we want to eat things that take a while for our body to digest. And most of those lower glycemic carbs are going to be whole food based. We want to have some sweet potatoes, we want to have some oats, like fruit that is paired with, some fat, like an apple with peanut butter, that slows our insulin response. We don't want to eat just naked carbs, just fruit by itself, a piece of bread by itself. So we're going to go through a huge overgeneralization of what happens in our body. So I'm going to take you out to eat to Olive Garden. Not sponsored, by the way. And so we're going to go to Olive Garden and you're going to have a couple breadsticks before our meal comes. You're going to have some salad with a little bit of their sugary Italian dressing. Then you're going to eat some lasagna. You're probably eating 100 grams of carbs in that meal, which is a lot of carbs. So what's going to happen is all of those carbs are going to then hit your bloodstream. So since you ate a huge meal of carbs, you did have some fat paired with it, but a lot of carbs, more than that 30 grams at a time. What's going to happen is that those carbs are going to hit your bloodstream and they're going to hit your bloodstream really quick. And your blood sugar is going to go up really, really fast. And so when your blood sugar goes up, our pancreas releases insulin. So insulin is released so that we can decrease our blood sugar level. So you're going to release a ton of insulin because you have a ton of glucose in your system. So when insulin is released, insulin's job is to lower the glucose. Insulin lowers the glucose. But since you ate kind of an extreme amount of carbs, you're going to have a ton of insulin. So insulin is going to drop your blood sugar below normal. So you're going to almost become hypoglycemic. You're going to feel a little shaky. You're going to feel like extra hungry. And you're like, I just ate a huge meal at Olive Garden. Why am I hungry? Maybe I need a little snack. Maybe I need some M&Ms or maybe I need a brownie. I want something sugary because we need to raise that blood sugar back up because you have dropped below normal. So say you grab some M&Ms off the counter. Once again, lots of sugar, lots of carbs. Then your blood sugar raises up. Again, more insulin's released. Then your blood sugar drops drastically again. This is the typical American diet. This skyrocket and depletion of blood sugar all day long because of the amount of carbs and not being paired properly with the other macronutrients of protein and fat. And so you're always hungry. You crave sweets like crazy. And you feel terrible during the day. This is that insulin roller coaster that I talk about. What we want is where we want to eat a normal amount of carbs. We want that insulin to raise, but we want it to come back down to normal, not dip below and go almost hypoglycemic, but come back to normal. Then in 3 hours or 5 hours when we're going to eat again, it's going to raise a little bit again, but we're not triggering this huge insulin response. We're not hitting that level where we need to send a bunch of insulin into our system. So we want these nice little small little baby roller coasters, not the, Cedar Falls, huge Ohio roller coasters that are like super scary. We want the little baby ones. So we're going to go back to our Olive Garden meal. So you're on this insulin roller coaster. It's highs, lows, highs, lows. You're hungry, you're craving stuff. We got to store this insulin somewhere. It's got to go somewhere. So from our bloodstream, the first place it's going to go is our liver. So we're going to store all of this glucose in our liver. When our liver gets maxed out, it's going to knock on the door of our muscle and it's going to say, hey, do you have extra room for me? I got a lot of extra glucose here. If you have been exercising, you may have some room for that glycogen to go. If you don't exercise and you don't use your muscles and pump some of that glycogen out, you're going to have no room. They're going to say, your muscles are going to say, nope, I'm full. Haven't used my muscles at all. I got no room. Liver's full, muscle is full. Guess who's not ever full? Guess who loves sugar? Your body fat cell. Your body fat cell is like a sponge. It has receptors on the outside that love them some sugar, love them some glucose, love them some glycogen. So that extra glycogen is going to go right into that fat cell and it's going to just suck it up like crazy. And that body fat cell, technically, we're born with only a certain number of fat cells. You don't get more fat cells, but your fat cells get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's just like a sponge. It loves that extra glucose. So then we notice, oh, okay, man, I'm really I'm putting on weight. I don't know why. Our pancreas has two sort of hormones in it. If we're releasing insulin, if we're spiking that insulin, we are storing fat. We are storing fat. We can also get to a point where we can release fat for energy, which is a little bit more like ketone metabolism, but not in a not in a ketone diet. And so how that works is as we start to kind of moderate your carbohydrates, which we do in my 6-week challenge for each person individually, we kind of find where your body's threshold is. And what we learn is how much carbohydrates your body can take without storing fat. So what happens is we are not eating a large amount of carbohydrates at one time. So when our body needs energy, it starts knocking at doors. It starts knocking on your liver. Like, hey, do you have some stored carb energy for me? Do you have some stored glucose or glycogen? The liver's like, oh, you've kind of been tapping into me. I'm out. Why don't you check muscle? Muscle says, hey, you've been lifting weights 3 times a week. So I'm actually using all of that stored glycogen. So I don't really have anything. So you need to go ask body fat if body fat's got some stuff, because I know they've always got some stored energy. So then we hit the body fat cell. And the body fat can actually release glucagon for energy. And so we put that glucagon back into our bloodstream and we're using that for energy. We're actually burning the fat and burning the energy from our fat cells for energy in between meals or overnight. So remember, glucagon is our fat burning hormone. Insulin is our fat storage hormone, and they're both being released by the pancreas. So if we get it just right, we are tapping out our storage and we are using body fat for energy. And that's when we see weight loss on the scale, fat loss. I don't really even care about weight loss. We see fat loss. So we alternate between using our carbs and using our fat. And we like to have in our 6-week challenge, we like to have a treat day where we have something that we don't normally have, that maybe has a little bit more sugar, a little bit more carbs, and that can actually replace our glycogen stores. And so that gives us fuel to work on for the next week. So we refill that glycogen, and carbs and water are stored together. So understand when everybody says, but I'm just losing water weight. So for every 1 gram of carbohydrate you also store 3 grams of water. So when we kind of cut our carbs back, you will see water weight because you're losing 3 grams of water for every 1 gram of carbohydrate. That's just kind of part of how weight loss happens. We lose some water when we lose those carbohydrates, but that's okay. We want to tap into the fat store. So we're not only losing that water weight, we're also tapping into fat metabolism and using fat for energy. So it's definitely individualized. It's different for every person. So, if you're going to tell me like, oh, I need, tell me how many grams of carbs. I do that in my 6-week challenge program, but we go into a lot of factors on what your activity level is and kind of where your starting weight is, and kind of go from there. But the reason I don't love the ketogenic diet is because our brain's number one source of energy is glucose. And so if you're not taking in glucose or using, then our brain's not functioning well. But some people can have too much glucose in their system and they have brain fog. So that's when we kind of start to cut back your carbohydrates. Then we lose some of that brain fog because we're not so bogged down with all of that glucose in our system. But we want to tap into both a little bit of burning carbs and a little bit of burning fat because it keeps everybody happy. It keeps our hormones happy. We feel good because we're eating carbs. We do this in my 6-week challenge as we move along and do some carb cycling where we do have some lower carb days where we're tapping into fat metabolism, and then days where you get a little bit of more carb boost so that you can actually, feel good and have those carbs and be able to use those for energy instead of, feeling kind of depleted all the time and not being able to enjoy those good hearty foods that we like, fruits and, whole grains and stuff like that, potatoes. We want those in our diet. We just have to eat them strategically and pair them properly. And so that's what we do in our 6-week challenge is we teach you all of these things and we customize it for your body. But I want you to understand how carbohydrates can affect your metabolism and how they can slow or they can, speed up your weight loss depending on the strategies that we use. And, I had a weight loss client that was doing Weight Watchers, and Weight Watchers allows you free foods. free. You don't have to count their points or whatever. So a lot of their foods are fruit. And so, I'm like, free is not free. So a apple or a banana has anywhere between 25 and 30 grams of carbs in it at a time. So that's not free. So if you're snacking on fruit all day, first problem, naked carbs. That's going to destroy your insulin. Number two, carbs are carbs and your body's going to use those. Those 25 grams of carbs, say you eat 4 apples a day, that's 100 grams of carbs. That's some people's daily limit of carbs on top of what you're already eating. So understanding that food has value, foods are made up of protein, carbs, and fat, and how we can use them strategically and not overdo. I mean, this person, not even in a week, lost 4 pounds on the scale because probably losing a little bit of carb and water, but also learning that like free is not free and everything has a value. And so we need to make sure that you're not eating excess carbs and just storing body fat all the time. We need to be tapping into that fat metabolism. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you guys were able to follow me and kind of learn a lot through the science of it. If this is things you're interested in, learning more about metabolism and kind of how our body works, let me know. If this podcast was interesting, please share it with others. Subscribe so you get our newest podcast every week. They drop every Monday. And follow me on Instagram at Dr. Kim Sheppard. And I would love to hear from you. And just let me know what you think about the podcast and any other episode options or ideas that you have. I would love to hear them. We're always looking for new things. So hopefully this was helpful, and we'll see you guys next week.